I think that the day in which we live today is very similar to what our founding fathers lived in the 1770s. I think we are on the verge of making the kind of decisions that they made, where that we are willing to risk our lives and our fortunes, that we're willing to put our sacred honor on the line for liberty.
We now are a nation known to start war. We feel compelled because of our insecurity that we have to go over and attack these countries to maintain our empire. We have over 700 bases, we're in 130 countries, and we're talking about bombing Iran. It is such a dramatic change from what is truly American and truly constitutional.
I don't want to run the world. The Constitution doesn't give me the authority to run the world. We ought to mind our own business is what we need to do. Spending overseas, wasted money. This is a continuation of a revolution. It is a peaceful revolution. It's up to you to spread this message around this country. This is an American cause. It's a cause of freedom. There's something going on in this country, and it's big. Spread the message. Thank you.
It's no surprise that the policy that has led to all of the suicides in Iraq was crafted by a draft dodger and a chicken hawk.
Who is that?
George Bush and Dick Cheney. George Bush was a draft dodger. He dodged the draft by going to the Texas and Alabama National Guard and never showing up. Cheney never served a day in his life, so it's no surprise that those guys don't give a f about the troops. I was in civil affairs. For example, we had translators that were Iraqis, and we gave the translators the Vietnam-era flak jackets that won't even stop an AK round. And I didn't think twice about it. I mean, I taught myself Arabic to be better at my job. I considered myself the nicest American in Iraq, you know. And, you know, we had the new flak jackets with the sappy plates in them, all the high-speed gear, and the new helmets. But I didn't examine to myself that, well, just the assumption that, like, we can rebuild their country better than they can. The presumptuousness of that.
That's the main thing I agree with.
Help those people in that country.
So how are we helping them with militarization?
We're stopping all the killing over there.
Or how long should we stay there?
That's up to the new president.
It's up to the people of Iraq.
Well, I'm sure they'll have a little say in it. But It's going to be up to the president whether or not we stay there, or whether the people want us there or not. If the president decides to take us out of there, whether they like it or not, they'll take him out.
It doesn't matter if that's the best thing for Iraq. How arrogant do you have to be to say, I know what's best for the Iraqi people better than what they do?
Army speaking to me from St. Paul, Minnesota earlier. Listening to the BBC once a major battle how to make the restoration of one of the world's most
Yeah, you got lucky asking about her. I'm pretty psyched.
You gonna see Amy Allen tonight, huh?
I'm gonna go see Amy freaking Allen.
Hottie that she is.
Well, it's kind of ironic. I've heard her referred to as the sex symbol of the Ron Paul movement, and I have been all too often referred to as the sex symbol of the anti-war movement. So, it might be kind of interesting to see what happens. You're not getting this on tape, are you?
What do you think about
Something happened in here. What it is something unclear.
Opposing the war on terror. Well, there certainly is a war on terror, and people who think it's not happening probably haven't been reading the news lately.
This battle line's being drawn.
I think we should worry more about the fact that our military is being controlled by corporate America. I believe our military today is the strong arm of corporate America, not the people. If our corporations can't go somewhere, then they send our military in there.
There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. Because time we stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look.
We have our troops in 140 countries, 700 bases. We're going bankrupt, and we have undermined our national defense. That is
1.4 million men and women active duty in uniform, 1.4 million in reserve capacities. Military spending, much of it hitting military spending in this country of $1 trillion a year. Now, you just take the Department of Defense spending.
Nobody's right if everybody. Young people stick their minds, getting so much resistance from everybody. Look what's going down. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going
Stop the war, it's not too late to dismantle this police state. Stop the war, it's not too late to dismantle this police state. Stop the war, it's not too late to dismantle this police state.
Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop, hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop, hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
She's in the limo, I think.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe the limo was something else, but she went to Ronstock. Yeah. Hey, you guys on your way to Ronstock?
Where's that at, dude?
I got directions, but they're kind of
an address?
No, I have directions. I have a phone number. One of the organizers.
Are you going there right now?
Yeah, Amy Allen's waiting for me.
I'll go follow you.
Oh man, I saw Full Metal Jacket, and you know that was supposed to be an anti-war movie, but I saw that, and I saw, I saw Gomer Pyle commit suicide at the end of the first act. Memorial Day this year, I also got this tattoo. This is our logo, but it's also, you know, the Field Expedient Memorial over the profile of Iraq.
I saw Derek.
Some gave off
for
nothing.
As Iraq veterans against the war, we are resisting an occupation we once risked our lives for.
One should be free. And we would cherish liberty even if liberty traveled alone. But liberty has companions, and those companions are peace and prosperity. War, on the other hand, the spirit of destruction, is the destroyer of prosperity and the destroyer of liberty.
There is one economic rule that we ought to lay to rest completely and totally. It was been taught in our public schools for too long that war is healthy for the economy. It absolutely is never healthy for the economy. I would say the economy ought to be booming here. Just think how many wars are going on around the world, how much we're spending on the military.
People lose their lives because of the pressures of poverty when we have, you know, what Ron Paul calls the worst regressive tax in America. You know, the inflation tax. Even that comes down to a matter of life and death. But the reason when there's a war that's unjust, it's always the movement that's most poignant and prominent in our country, is because that's the worst manifestation of corrupt power.
There sit the enablers of the wars of empire, without whom such wars could not be waged. Right down there, ironically enough, on Constitution Avenue.
So you think they're being fear-mongered into not following the Constitution?
Oh, yeah.
Or do they forget about their oath to the Constitution because of the elite's fear?
They're not even reminded of it. It's I mean, the same conditioning that they're trying to do to the American people at large. They want all the American people to forget about the Constitution, but especially the troops. Honoring that oath, it takes an immense amount of courage.
Today, the Democrats and Republicans could give a damn less about the Constitution.
I'm now realizing more and more. Democrat, Republican, environmentalist, militarist, gay, straight, black, white. The Constitution is more important than any of it! That's right. And if we lose the Constitution, we are going to have problems bigger than which party's in power, if it's not our party. And if we lose the Constitution that the founders gave us, we are going to have problems bigger than terrorism.
If you take a look at our war history and the times we go into battle, what you come up with is that those bombs need to be exploded about every 10, 15, 20 years. And we're right on schedule to take good care of the military-industrial complex.
During the siege of Fallujah, a young lance corporal was shot through the side of his flak jacket in a firefight to the west of the city. The bullet hit an artery near his spine. My team was called to help get him to the field hospital at Camp Takadam. He was in a stretcher in the Humvee in front of me, and I watched as the corpsman treated the external wounds in a frightened, hurried panic as the dust from the hot road swirled around us. When we got there, I carried him in as he moaned and writhed in pain, barely conscious. He flailed his arm off the stretcher, and I put it back by his side, and I told him, "Don't worry, you made it. You're gonna be okay." But he died only minutes later from the internal bleeding. I have to live with that memory every day, but I have learned from it
I'm an Iranian American. My mom's from Iran, my father's from Germany. And I've lived here since 1986. Hey, you want to be on camera? No. The Support the Troops group.
I'm going to go back home and see for dinner every night. Because they're going to smoke.
Republicans. Classic Republicans. Not classic Republicans either. Conservatives. Yeah.
They are conservative, but
Yeah.
they support the troops in their own way. They're supporting their troops as raising money for them and keeping them there because they have family. They have family there. And when America gave weapons of mass destruction to Iraq, they were used on us while I was there in 1980 to 1986, and we had chemical warfare, and it was awful.
That is why we need a change in foreign policies so that we can defend this country if it ever became necessary. This whole idea that we need to go to in Iran makes no sense whatsoever. Iran happens to spend 1% on their military compared to we spend 99% more. That is what we spend on our defense. And what do? We try to intimidate and build fear in the people that they have nuclear weapons and are about to unleash these on Europe and the United States, and that we have to do something. All we hear about are the war drums beating, that we have to go to war against another country, that we have to invade Iran, which we should not have to do.
During the Bush years, we have invaded 2 countries. We gave a silent wink and a nod for the destruction of a third, and now in the waning days, we're on the brink of another neocon war.
America has not seen it hit rock bottom yet in those countries. It has hit pretty low to bottom. Iran is a wonderful country with beautiful people and great landscape, but the government has destroyed it and its credibility and its beauty. And I think that this is what's happening here, and it's happening at a pretty rapid rate that you would wake up and other Ron Paul supporters would wake up to the fact that they need to retain the country and its freedom.
I will not tell you that the Band-Aids applied by Democrats and Republicans will heal us. I will not pretend that everything is just going to be okay while we are bled dry by tyrants. And if it takes the last full measure of devotion, I will not allow the same fate to befall this country. This young movement is getting past the external wounds to the greater evils plaguing this nation. We know that the greatest threat to American security is the current corruption of our government.
And there's too many people who are afraid to face the reality of that when it's like right in their faces as a matter of life and death. And when I tell people, like, some people gave all for nothing, like they died for nothing, like it's really hard, you know. And I wrote a poem about it. I just did a new video from that, so I'm hoping that helps spread the message.
One of the best vindications of the whole campaign has been the tremendous response our campaign and our message has been received by our military personnel. But it pleased me to no end to see when they added up in the first quarter of this year that our campaign was able to raise more money from active military personnel than all the rest put together.
Freedom! Freedom! Freedom!
There's no reason to be discouraged. There's every reason to be concerned. There's every reason to have a sense of urgency because time is running out. We know that we have a certain length of time to turn the ship of state around. We have been introduced to something in this country historically different than any other nation ever had. A large respect and understanding of personal liberty. And it was written in our Constitution, but in the last 100 years there has been severe, persistent abuse of that liberty, and we have to change that.
My roommate, Jeff Millard, has degenerative bone disease.
All I want's my camera.
He's supposed to be in a wheelchair in less than a year. I wanted to get tested, and I went in and I said, I was training in junkyards where they were, I was around vehicles that were hit with DU, and they said, all right, well, piss in the bottles, and in 5 months we'll have some results for you. Yeah, but they're in denial about it. I mean, it's Agent Orange all fucking over again. The only thing that I'm really concerned about, though, is having kids, because it's with your sperm and your DNA, and you hear the Pentagon say, "Oh, you can sprinkle it on your cereal and eat it for breakfast." Like literally, that's the quote that everybody holds up because it's the most absurd. But someone from the Pentagon actually said that. If I acknowledge that DU is f***ed up and we're not being told the truth, I got to go all the way down the rabbit hole. I got to start questioning everything. I got to refuse orders to go to Iraq.
Our president's grandfather was one of the first to get busted contributing to the Nazis in World War II.
It's called the North American Union.
Do you think 9/11 was an inside job?
Yes.
The Federal Reserve is the biggest scam in history, and you are its victim.
The New World Order. The New World Order.
I don't believe all these conspiracy theories. One world coming together, couple of guys trying to rule it all. No bloody way.
Did you hear about that recent Bilderberg group meeting?
We are telling everybody all about Illuminati.
What America has been waiting for is one spark of courage that will absolutely, with everything at stake, go into the face of adversity. There's one group of people that has to become a household word, and that is Illuminati.
You've probably heard about the New World Order and the microchip they're planning on implanting under people's skin. There was a couple after 9/11 that was on a show, I think it was Fox News actually, he volunteered to have it implanted. What's your view on all that stuff?
Well, it'd be horrible if it ever came. I'm sure people have thought about that, and if we're careless, maybe it will come. I don't think that's going to happen soon. It's not going to happen next week or next month or next year. A bigger worry is a financial crisis, a weakening economy, the expansion of the war, and more or less a bankruptcy of this country.
All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is giving me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. If they say you owe us this much money in taxes, they just deduct it out of your chip digitally.
Total control.
Total control. And if you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, they can just turn off your chip. And you have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control of the people.
If we had political chaos and we resorted to more government rather than less, then down the road, those are the kind of things that could happen.
exceptions if you show them. And that's just, I don't know, it demands, it's such a serious charge that it just demands evidence. And
Tucker,
again,
give me 2 hours of your time, bring me back on your show, and I'll show
What
you.
if you're wrong, Tucker? What if you're wrong?
You have no idea the number of things I've been wrong on.
You think it's okay then for having jihad? Because you don't believe like we do. Off with your head.
Wait a minute. I don't.
And I want you, when you get married, to put this thing over your wife's face and let her only see the eyes.
That must make a woman
if she
feel-
doesn't like you and doing what you do, beat her to death that night. It's okay. That's the kind of a religion you say is okay. They want to do that to us.
I'd rather it's over there and not over here.
Do you think the war was constitutionally started? I mean, you think it was constitutional?
No, I think we started it because we got whacked by 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11.
That was Afghanistan, right? Then you go to Afghanistan?
Both of them are over that. Nah, I'm done.
Why is it that when you ask questions about 9/11, it's off out of bounds? I know when I discuss it, it's amazing. I get attacked.
Because I think you're going to fight those people one place or another, and I just soon fight them over there as fight them here.
A war without authorization from the people's representatives. Do you remember before the Iraq War, asked about the United States going to war, and Bush replied, I haven't made up my mind. As though in America the people no longer decide. Was there a new amendment made to our Constitution? Something about the decidifier? Who gets to decidify issues of life and death?
I'm the most open-minded person in the world, and I don't trust the government. So if there was information that the U.S. government was behind 9/11, I'm the first person to sign up and say, I would love to see it, and I'm open-minded and convinced.
Have you looked at Building 7?
There is not, absolutely.
I've been studying it now for well over a year and a half because I live in Mexico, and I feel very strongly that the truth is not the forthcoming truth. I don't know. But I know this. I do have somewhat of an abolition background, being a member of the Panacea abolition team, and I spoke to a few of my teammates a couple of weeks ago, and we're all in agreement that buildings can't fall at the rate of gravity without any system. And that's called physics. That's not an opinion. United States Department of Justice not charged Osama bin Laden for 9/11? Now, they charged him when he blew up our embassy in Africa in '98. Why the biggest terrorism act in history have they failed to officially charge him for? Why have they not convened the grand jury, presented their evidence, and got an indictment? Second, go to the internet and go to the FBI website and go to their international list of top 10 terrorists. You will see bin Laden there. Bring his name up and his picture. Amazingly, all the charges, the embassy of '98 and all this other stuff is all listed. But ironically, nothing on 9/11. Nothing. Now, when the FBI was pressed as to why 9/11 wasn't included, their response was, we don't have enough evidence. Now, people, if you're like me, that is extremely disturbing. We've fought 2 wars, we've changed our entire foreign policy, and we've had the Patriot Act put on us, all supposedly because of Osama bin Laden.
I met Rockefeller through a female attorney I knew who called me up one day and said, one of the Rockefellers would like to meet you. And I met him and I liked him, and he was a very, very smart man. And we used to talk and share ideas and thoughts. He's the one who told me 11 months before 9/11 ever happened that there was going to be an event, and out of that event, we were going to invade Afghanistan to run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We were going to invade Iraq, to take over the oil fields, establish a base in the Middle East, and make it all part of the New World Order. And I remember he was telling me how you're going to see soldiers looking in caves for people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these places. And there's going to be this war on terror, which is no real enemy, and the whole thing is a giant hoax, but it's a way for the government to take over the American people.
He told you it was going to be a hoax.
Oh, yeah.
You see folks like Stephen Jones explaining to you how it's physically impossible for 2 giant 110-story buildings to collapse on their footprint without any kind of explosive help.
Boy, and if you look at the building, the f***er is exploding. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. I've looked at it a bunch of times. A lot of people don't watch it anymore because it's too terrible to watch it over again.
It's hard to watch.
Yes, but when you watch it, the buildings are clearly exploding.
Once you've been down the rabbit hole and you've seen the videos, it's impossible to see the images of September 11th and not understand the full impact of watching people, Americans, murdered not only for profit and gain, but for shock and terror. It's disgusting.
Evidence needed to prove it to anybody, if they'll just look at the evidence, that 9/11 was an inside job, right?
9/11 was an inside job! 9/11 was an inside job, people! Wake up!
who get together every year at very remote places in the world with high security. And anyways, what they do is pretty much plan out their plans for, you know, the years to come as to how to construct world government.
Basically, the banking establishments of the world.
Yeah, I was getting to
You
that.
got the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, Warburgs.
Actually, weren't the Clintons there?
Clintons.
Like,
Yeah.
You said you would go if I answered the question. All right, here's the answer. I happened to be in Europe then on my way to Russia. I was invited to go to Bilderberg by Vernon Jordan, a friend of mine, and to the best of my knowledge, NAFTA was not discussed by anybody in my presence.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
And some of the top politicians, basically a power elite fest held every year, and they basically decide the policies of the world. Then they have their little buddies such as the CFR in the US and the Royal Institute of International Affairs in England. And you see, when we try to explain to people the actual Bilderbergers, they usually think it's like some burger joint that we're talking about. But it's, just so you know, it's not.
Do you think these Bilderbergers actually talk about burgers and stuff? I think people will believe that they, you know, the most important people get around, you know, to meeting each other in private every year just to talk about how to sell their burgers.
Yeah, come to think of that, I don't think that's how it goes.
I have a good buddy at one time, J. Edgar Hoover, director of the FBI, 40 years ago. He said the individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous that he cannot believe it even exists. And that's the problem we have today. This conspiracy is so monstrous, so demonic, that we tell people about it and they say, you're crazy, this is America, it can't happen here.
I can't tell you because they're controlling my thoughts through my dentures. I'm serious, man. Thank you. They told me that they would increase the severity of my headaches if I said anything about them in public, so I can't.
I had an invitation about a week ago to the Council on Foreign Relations. They're meeting 3 times this week. I believe they sent invitations to all the delegates. They were instituted by Rockefeller, I believe, back in 1923. You know, they do try to influence the media to a certain degree. There's a great amount of people in the media who are members of the Council on Foreign Relations. They do try to influence politics to a certain degree. Richard N. Haas, he is the president of the Council on Foreign Relations. He was moderating the symposium, and they opened it up to questions. I asked him, grab the mic, and I said, is it wise for us to try to influence our elected officials to violate their oath to the people in these foreign engagements? With using the government to do that is certainly not the democratic process, because it's outside of their contract. And he kind of just said to me, after stumbling a little bit, this guy has absolutely got the best composure I've ever seen of anyone. He just totally stumbled. And he said that it would be dangerous to allow, individuals to have the control of that the government is by some whatever has this authority to do these things. Well, the Constitution, well, it says we the people ordain and establish this Constitution, not we the government. So, he completely ignored that. I mean, that wasn't really important to him. He also said that they don't influence people to violate their Constitution, but I think They do, and I believe everyone would agree with that.
I have a pretty close-up vantage of that world, and I could be wrong, and again, I'm completely open-minded about everything. But my strong sense is that all those sort of, international relations groups, I mean, usually it's a bunch of retired State Department office, consular affairs officers who, get together and talk about their dreams for the way the world ought to be.
If you want to know where Barack Obama, where John McCain get these things that they run on, right there at that meeting, you will find the source of where those ideas are coming from. Because, see, it wasn't from the American people. The idea of, let's say, hiking up the gas prices, like Obama was suggesting, that's something that came right out of the mouth of a think tank from the Council on Foreign Relations.
I mean, it's pretty bureaucratic. I mean, maybe it's a vast conspiracy, but I have trouble believing it.
A lot of these things, the ideas that they're conveying, come up with these with think tanks, and then they give them to the candidates. Richard N. Haas meets with the candidates on a regular basis. He met with Mike Huckabee back in September of 2007, before Mike Huckabee surged in the polls. And they do have a agenda. Maybe some of them do have good intentions with it, but the agenda to bring our world to a one world government. But I don't believe that they have the idea or understanding of individual sovereignty or appreciate that.
Bilderbergers? I hear that term, I'm not really sure what it is.
That recent Bilderberg group meeting in, what was it, Virginia?
Yeah, recently there was one, and there were some reports on it. I didn't read a whole lot about it, but
Man.
certainly we're there.
What do you think they're doing there? Seriously, what do you think they're doing there?
Well, they probably get together and talk about how they're going to control the banking systems of the world and natural resources. And we get together and we talk about how we're going to get our freedom back. So we have our own things to talk about too.
Do you know anything about a group called the Bilderberg Group?
Called the what?
Bilderberg Group?
No.
The what?
Bilderberg Group.
No.
Group? The who to what group?
The Bilderberg Group. No.
Yeah, the problem is that we don't actually have that much power anymore. Let me just say, if evidence arises that Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski are directly controlling world events from some hidden location, I will be the first one to say, holy shit, that's a great story. I mean, look, I don't know, and I don't like to presume to know things I don't. But let me just suggest one thing. This is my guess. I think if you were able to penetrate to the very beating heart of the Bilderberg conference, or sneak into a CFR meeting in disguise, you would be so bored that you would nod off.
The idea
Well,
scandalized traditionally.
frankly,
David Willey reports
in my activism, it doesn't really matter which men behind the curtain are pulling the strings. So I'm not concerned with analyzing, how the CFR works, because if they're part of the worst result of the CFR is that they get us in, they are allowed to bully us and badger us and propagandize us into destructive foreign policy.
This is scary. There are time-tested ways that would-be dictators close down a democracy or crush an open society. And we're seeing each of these 10 put in place right now. You saw it in Germany when the National Socialists took over legally a parliamentary democracy. It wasn't a coup. They did it systemically, step by step.
If I would tell you that Hitler rolled into my country with tanks and guns, I would distort history. The truth is, we elected Hitler by 98% of the vote by means of the ballot box.
I'm a student of history, and I've studied the past, and I see what's happening in the present. It doesn't take a genius to predict the future.
I was born in Austria, and I lived under Hitler's brutal regime for 7 years, and after World War II, 3 more years under Soviet communism occupation. Hitler's party, National Socialism. Listen carefully. I translate. National Socialist. From the word national, the word Nazi was derived. So we had National Socialism.
That has cost untold millions and millions of people their freedoms, not to mention their lives. And that's the big decision that's facing America today.
Hitler talked like an American politician. He was a great orator. By Austrian tradition, it was that the women were good wives, good mothers. In Austria, under socialism, equality was the big word, what everybody had to have. For that, we had a huge welfare apparatus.
I mean, this is the tool that the communists and the Marxists and fascists and from Asia and Europe throughout history have always used. We are here to protect you. We're here to take care of you. Trust us. We're the government. We're looking out for your welfare.
Our taxes went up to 70%. To take from those who work hard, to give to those who have not. Everybody had to be equal. So when we heard about the Equal Rights Amendment, I did not know anybody who was against it. Equal rights for women. Oh, we thought that was wonderful. And especially the teachers, they were gung-ho for that. But then, when the war started in 1939, they drafted our young men. They also drafted our young girls. When the news started coming back to the families that their daughter was wounded or killed, we realized that the Equal Rights Amendment gave us the frosting on the cake, and the cake was so rotten underneath. And I remember in South Dakota in 1973, the Equal Rights Amendment was being heard in committee in the House. So my good husband said, well, honey, history is coming back here too. You better go up to the Capitol and tell them what happened in Austria. I went up there. It didn't do much good. And I never was in any form or way politically involved. But I tried to tell the legislators what happened in Austria, but hardly anybody listened to me. But I did not give up. I worked for 6 years to rescind that law because twice I lost by 1 vote. I traveled the state, and I talked in 72 towns, and we won. So, we also had health and safety agencies. Here it's commonly known as OSHA. Our healthcare system was also nationalized. It was free for everybody. And it was very misused because everybody was rushing to the doctors for everything and anything. If you needed some elective surgery, which was not an emergency, you waited 18 months for a bed in the hospital because all the hypochondriacs were using the beds in the hospital because it was free. So, a lot of good doctors left the country, including my own husband. My brother-in-law, who was a family physician, a very conscientious doctor, he told me when he would go to his office at 8 o'clock in the morning, there were 40 patients waiting for him. It was like practicing medicine on a conveyor belt. But if that medication, that prescription, was not on the government's list, and since the doctors were all salaried by the government, they took it out of his paycheck. They controlled our healthcare system. We also had euthanasia. I was sent to a small village in the Alps in Austria. There were about 15 mentally handicapped people. And one I know really well, he was our janitor in our school. One morning, I looked out by my classroom window, and all those 15 people were being put into a van from the health department. So off they went. 6 months later, the letters started dribbling back to the families that their son or daughter died a natural, merciful death.
Are we going to be a free land, a land of liberty, or are we going to be an enslaved land where Big Brother takes care of our every need?
Number one, invoke a terrifying internal and external threat, real or not real, and hype it. Number two, create a secret prison system where torture takes place. You cannot close down an open society without state torture. So why should this scare us, law-abiding American citizens? Because there is not an example of a nation that created a prison system outside the rule of law that did not sooner or later turn it against you and me.
The so-called USA Patriot Act and the Military Commissions Act, in my judgment, was a 1-2 punch against the Fourth Amendment for sure. And I think it does serious damage to other amendments as well.
And the president and his lawyers, he now says he has the right to call any of us an enemy combatant.
Individuals have just recently been added to the suspected terrorist list by the fusion centers through the various state law enforcement agencies. For example, the MIAC report in the state of Missouri that was released not too many months ago named 3 individuals. And those 3 individuals were Ron Paul, Bob Barr, and yours truly, Chuck Baldwin. And it said that the people that supported us could be perceived as potential domestic terrorists, etc. This was a warning put out to the Missouri State Police departments. So by doing so, you were taking people that were involved in the political process. All three of us ran for President of the United States. And all three of us were engaged in the legal political process of this country. All three of us were debating the issues, articulating the issues. We represented to various degrees a large segment of the population of this country in that election in 2008. And yet, according to the Fusion Centers and the MIAC report and the DHS that superintended this, we were accused of being, at least our followers were, of being potential domestic terrorists. This is the kind of thing that we saw in Nazi Germany.
You, me, innocent U.S. citizens, and locked us up in a 10 by 12-foot cell in a Navy brig for 3 years.
This is the kind of thing that we saw in Communist Russia and Mao's China, where that political thought, political ideology was tantamount to an act of terrorism.
All right, and psychiatrists know isolation makes sane people insane.
Posse Comitatus is, for all intents and purposes, destroyed under the Military Commissions Act. Patriot Act has spawned everything that we see going on now under the rubric of the Department of Homeland Security, the invasion of privacy, the usurpation of states and their sovereignty, as well as the abridgment of individual liberty. Not to mention what we see going on at the airports, courtesy of TSA.
Number 3, create a paramilitary force that's not answerable to the people. Who is that? That's right, setting up shop now in San Diego, setting up shop in Illinois. They already set up shop in South Carolina. These people are hand-picked torturers and murderers from countries like Chile and El Salvador, where they torture their own citizens. Mercenary armies.
That is micromanagement of your life. That hasn't happened as much yet. I mean, they're installing FISA and telecom and all that kind of stuff is happening here. Those are the red flags that are starting to pop up to take away your personal liberties.
Benjamin Franklin, I think, summarized it pretty well when he said, "They who give up essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither." And that's pretty much where we are now. To give up our freedoms and liberties in the name of protection and security is a bad trade. My dad used to say, a bird in a cage is secure, but it's not free. How much freedoms are we willing to surrender under the rubric of security?
I showed it to the post office and they said, that's not possible. All right? Mail tampering is happening to activists around the country. People's email is being interfered with. People's phone calls are being interfered with. Kucinich's website was jammed when he tried to move forward with impeachment. They've passed this FISA bill. It is going to be your mail, your phone calls, right? Your letters from your kids. Tomorrow, it's going to be Congress being surveilled. We have opened the gates of hell.
The whole agenda is to create a one-world government, and they're doing it in sections. The European currency, the euro, and the European Constitution is one part of it. Now they're trying to do it in America with the North American Union, right? And they want to create a new currency called the Amero.
Now, tragically, the people of the United States have no idea
that our elitist rulers from the New World Order are trying to impose their version of the European Union on the people of the United States.
Everybody know what SPP is? It's like the NAU. Security Prosperity Partnership, the precursor to the NAU. Precursor to the NAU. So we're going to say America and sovereignty. We don't want your SPP. America and sovereignty. We don't want your SPP. America and sovereignty. We don't want your SPP. America and sovereignty. We don't want your SPP.
They really don't want you to sneak through here without paying, do they?
They are going to indebt us for generations. Our government has become the puppet of private industry, and they've figured out how to team up to make billions off the public's roadways.
The 70 flocks latched onto the idea and let the words spill out during an appearance on the Larry King Show. And with the exception of Lou Dobbs and Glenn Beck and some good radio talk show hosts, the media has blanked this out.
It is a 4,000-mile multimodal network of toll roads, rail lines, utilities, telecommunications, and pipelines of all sorts. It will be up to 1,200 feet wide and the biggest land grab in Texas and U.S. history, taking 580,000 acres of private Texas land.
Yes, they definitely would like to bring Mexico, United States, and Canada into a single union, just like the European Union. And they deny that that's their plans, but it isn't too well hidden.
They're planning to toll the living daylights out of urban commuters in order to give their cronies government-sanctioned monopolies over your roads that you depend on for daily living. We already see the dramatic decline of the standard of living in America in a very short period of time.
It's called the North American Union.
These highways belong to we the people, not the government, not the road lobby. In Texas, they even passed a law called Quick Take Eminent Domain that allows the government to vacate the landowner within 90 days, whether or not their case is settled. They have no right to steal our land in the name of public use when it's really about private gain and government profiteering. Eminent domain has always been used for roads, but now for the first time the government can literally steal your land, pay you next to nothing for it, and give it to a private foreign company for profit. And for most of these ranchers, it's been in their family for up to 150 years, some of these folks. And they're stealing their land. How are they going to go find another, 1,000 acres to go put their cattle on that wasn't handed to them through their inheritance?
It's essential that we return to constitutional government. And my view is the only way we can do that is through a resurrection of state autonomy.
The mentality inside this building behind us is that no matter what they decide to charge us, whether it's for gas or for tolls, whatever those new taxes are, those motorists are going to pay it because you have to. We have no other way to get around, and they know we have to get to work, and they won't give us any real alternatives. There's only so much money in the family budget that can go to transportation before it takes money away from the necessities. There is a massive war going on in this country between the pro-privatization special interest groups and freedom-loving Americans, which is you and I.
This thing is slithering through. I was there in Montebello, Canada, when Bush met with the Canadian Prime Minister and the Mexican President, and I followed him again to New Orleans, where he met with the same people. And before you know it, unless we take action, unless we demand a vote in Congress, unless we demand statements of commitment by the presidential candidates, we are going to wind up as citizens of a new country called North America, where the dollar, so-called, would be replaced by the euro. Passports will be required to prevent the people of Canada and Mexico to travel freely throughout the United States. By the way, they changed the name to the North American Leaders Summit.
Have you guys heard of the North American Union?
No.
No? Anybody? You guys heard of the North American Union? Okay. Well, basically, Obama's taking this on too. He's continuing a secret plan that George Bush signed into office without, like, Congress's approval. That's going to create a huge super highway, and all your rights, basically the Constitution, won't mean shit. So yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Obama said on CNN that he says there's no evidence of him seeing a North American Union coming. So what would you say to him?
You hear them deny that all the time, but they have these meetings constantly, and they call them partnerships and peace, and they just call them by something else, and they won't admit the truth. But there's been articles written, there's been appropriations for the highway, and so it's a matter of trust, and that's one thing maybe is healthy. There's less trust in what our government officials tell us, and that's the first sign that there's going to be change, is when the people say, we just maybe can't believe everything our government tells us. So to me, that's healthy.
American sovereignty! We don't want your SPP! American sovereignty! We don't want your SPP!
So what's it gonna take for this revolution to bring America back to the Constitution?
It's a matter of waking up people, and whether or not our program, the Campaign for Liberty, is successful or not. And so far, so good.
To block the North American Union, to speak out regularly against the North American Union.
I like the idea of state sovereignty. That was what was in our Constitution. Most government should have been at the state level.
Remember, back in 1787, it was the states that created the central government, not the other way around. It was the states, through the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, that set the parameters of authority for the central government. Today, it is the central government that determines the parameters of the states. It's completely inverted from what it was intended in 1787. And the only way we're going to get back to a semblance of constitutional government is for states to reclaim their independence, their sovereignty, and their autonomy.
A lot of people, and even a lot of states, have started passing resolutions and expressing themselves that they don't want the North American Union, and they don't want the NAFTA highway, these international highway, that be defending the principle of national sovereignty.
Congress needs to hit the road. Congress needs to hit the road.
Where are you going? Where's
Never constitutional rights. When they come together with the fight. Start a revolution. Break down the illegal institutions. Paul t-shirts. Come send our capital to Minnesota. Paul knows how to go to Minnesota.
So you're supporting Mr. McCain?
Am I supporting you?
Endorsing the president?
I haven't endorsed anybody. I haven't endorsed McCain.
Who should we vote for? Whoever you want to.
9/11 is actually...
Churchill said it in 1831, in a democracy, the people will get the government they deserve. And it's the people that have to take this country back, and it's a cultural revolution that we need, one that embraces.
Oh, pirates, yes, they're rabbi, sold I to the merchant ship. Many times they took I from their bottomless pit. Oh, my hands were made strong by the hand of the Almighty.
One thing is that it's the same, seems to be the same problem repeated over and over again, is that the servants in government seem to serve the wealthy and the powerful and not the people.
I think it's so obvious that the country needs a change in direction, and so many people have come to the conclusion that the two candidates now of the two major parties really don't offer any change at all. I mean, deep down inside, their policies are essentially the same.
I've recently stopped taking literature from people and stopped taking such a direct interest in what's going on, because in recent past times I've become depressed by everything going on and what I've learned.
I realize now that we've been being trained to have lower and lower expectations of what we are supposed to do as citizen leaders of this country.
The fact that we as a people have had the wool pulled over our eyes, and there's so much going on above our heads, under our heads, to every side of us that we don't know about. That doesn't surprise me in the least. I mean, no.
Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery.
The forces that are working against us are strong, they're great.
Redemption songs.
Even though they're small victories, I feel like I'm just losing. We're losing the battle.
Redemption.
We're being told your only role is to show up and vote, and even then your vote might not get counted.
Politics today, you'll hear me say that to the crowd today, politics today is pro wrestling. It is pro wrestling. You know what I mean by that? I mean by that the Dems and Repubs in front of you and in front of the public is going to tell how they hate each other and how they're different. But as soon as the cameras go off in the back room, they're all going out to dinner together. And they're all buddies cutting deals. It's just like pro wrestling. In front of the public, we hate each other. We're going to rip our heads off. But in the locker room, we're all friends.
Are you suggesting professional wrestling is fake?
I'm suggesting politics is fake.
Would that dealing with Vince McMahon?
Not much will change, but yeah, it just seems really pointless. the whole damn thing, you know. It's a big farce.
Obama McCain, they're all the same. 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 Obama McCain, they're all the same.
Rhetoric's a little bit different, but you know, they have the same foreign policy. They have the same domestic spending policy, the same monetary policy. How many of them talk about the Federal Reserve and getting rid of the income tax? They don't hear any of that. So
why in the world does the American government borrow money from the banks when they have the ability to create it themselves without borrowing it and paying interest on it? Why? And nobody can answer that question. Not one politician ever raises that. Why does the American government borrow money when they can create it without paying interest?
Hey, what do we want to do? Hey,
If the American government does it, it'll create inflation. That's the answer. I say, well, let's look at it. The American government has the Federal Reserve do it, which creates the same inflation as if they did it, but also with the inflation, now you're getting massive debt.
I thought I already knew everything about the income tax. Boy, was I wrong.
Hey, Ron, who owns the Federal Reserve?
Me?
Who owns the Federal Reserve? Do you know about Federal Reserve Bank and its significance?
How so?
You know what the Federal Reserve is?
Sure.
Okay. What is it? Part of the government or what? What is it?
It's part of our government, yes.
What branch of the government is it under?
The
You know?
financing.
Have you guys ever heard of the Federal Reserve? You guys know what that is?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't remember what it is though.
Is the Federal Reserve, is that federal? What branch of the government is it under?
The Federal Reserve? Yeah, I would assume it's under the federal government.
What branch of the government is the Federal Reserve? Do you know?
Through the Department of Treasury, you mean that reserve or the Army
I'm just
Reserve?
asking if you know.
Are you talking about the Army Reserve?
What's wrong with the Federal Reserve?
Down with the Federal Reserve.
What's wrong with it?
What's that?
What's wrong with it?
They're printing monopoly money. That's for sure. Devaluing the dollar, all that. This needs to happen. This is actually the expert right here.
What do you know about the Federal Reserve?
What do I know about the Federal Reserve? Nothing.
Do you want to know about it?
Right now?
Yeah, what's wrong with the Federal Reserve?
I'm sorry?
What's wrong with the Federal Reserve?
2 words, fiat currency. It's not backed by gold. What else can you say?
So with the Federal Reserve, you have inflation and debt. Now, if the American government made the money backed by gold, which limited the amount they could make, you wouldn't have debt and you wouldn't have inflation.
We're just trying to get the message out and trying to let the people know, the locals know what's really going on with our financial system. I mean, everybody uses Federal Reserve notes, but nobody knows the process and how it comes about and how money actually works.
What branch of the government is the Federal Reserve under? I don't know. It'd be under, I don't know. Under the
Treasury.
No, the Federal Reserve. They issue the currency, the money. Is the Federal Reserve federal?
They don't supposed to be, but it could be national. I mean, it could be multinational, worldwide. It's if you subscribe to the what do you call it, the one world government theory. But I don't know if there's such a thing.
trying to think of the guy's name.
That's all right. So
Now you're starting to sound like Sean Hannity.
Sean Hannity?
Yes.
You ever curious to find out?
Yeah. What is it?
I would guess it'd be Department of Treasury. Is that right?
Well, the stockholders technically own it. What's more important is who controls it. The bankers, people who get appointed to the Federal Reserve, special interests on Wall Street really control it. The technical ownership of the stockholders, which are all the independent banks that belong to the Federal Reserve System.
So we're talking Rothschild, some of the big guys.
There's any Rothschilds involved.
Are there European financial interests?
International bankers. Have you ever seen?
What's more important is who has the inside information and what they're going to do. That's where they make their money and control.
We do. I don't know.
How they set interest rates and what they do and how they do it.
wasn't for dedicated Americans like you, I wouldn't be here today. I'd still be working for the IRS. One dedicated American who enlightened me was a lady named D.V. Kidd. And one day she was on the radio back in 1996, seems like a long time ago, and she was challenging the listeners of this particular talk show to look into the federal income tax. And little did she know that one of the listeners to that show was an IRS special agent dedicated to abiding by his oath to the Constitution. But I took up the challenge, spent about 2 years of part-time, off-duty research, faced with a choice of remaining or being fearful, keeping quiet, protecting my career, protecting my paycheck and my pension, or exhibiting some courage, some spine. I decided to speak up.
Take note of the overseers of the destruction of the dollar. This is a mighty temple befitting the gods of antiquity. It's the Federal Reserve Building. There sit the enablers of the wars of empire.
For one thing, it's impossible to fund an empire without fiat money just because the expense would be enormous. I mean, for instance, if we were on the gold standard and we only accepted precious metals, you'd have to mine it or do something to come up with it to pay us all off, and it's a lot easier just to print.
It's not a government agency, it's a cartel. It's no different than a sugar cartel or an oil cartel or a banana cartel. This happens to be a banking cartel. It is made up of the big, giant banking corporations so they can plunder the marketplace. That's what cartels always do.
A lot of Republicans say they believe in the free market, but I would argue that as long as you support having a central bank, you don't believe in a free market whatsoever.
But now they had a particular problem which is similar to all cartels. How do you enforce the cartel agreement? They brought the government in as a partner.
The Federal Reserve loans money to Congress, and Congress pays it back to the Federal Reserve with interest. And the Federal Reserve's loaning them money that they're fabricating out of thin air.
That's all the Federal Reserve Act is a cartel agreement so that nobody can escape from it. If you try and violate the cartel agreement, you go to jail. That's what the Federal Reserve System is.
There are thousands of police officers, thousands of city councils, tens of millions of Americans that need to know the truth, and it's up to you to bring it to them. The IRS is administering the income tax beyond what the law and the Constitution allow.
Nothing here is useless, everyone's in pain. We see the signs, we're helpless and the ignorance remains. A sneaking premonition, a black car motorcade.
So what would you do if you had the power, the monopoly power to create the nation's money? Wow, what a thought, huh? You know what you would do? You would create lots of it, and lots more of it, and as much of it as you can, and you would benefit from that, and that's what the Federal Reserve System does. They have no limit as to how much money they can create. They create it literally out of nothing.
So that your children can be debt slaves to the Chinese the rest of their lives.
Prices are not going up, folks. It's the value of the dollar going down. It's called inflation. Every dollar that you earn, every dollar that you invest, every dollar that you put in some kind of a monetary or dollar-denominated investment, whether it be a savings account or an insurance policy or a retirement fund, anything that's based on dollars, every day that passes, a little bit of that value is chiseled away. They're stealing money from you. So that's how you are the victim. Interesting fact, if you had 25 cents back when I was a boy, 25 cents or 3 dimes in your pocket, which were backed 90% by silver, you could buy a gallon of gasoline with it. Cost a quarter a gallon. I remember that. Today, if you've got 3 dimes or a quarter back with 90% silver in them, you melt down the silver, you sell the silver and get Federal Reserve notes, you can still buy 1 gallon of gasoline with it. So you see, prices really haven't gone up. Gas hasn't gone up. Housing hasn't gone up. Groceries have not gone up. The fact is that the value of the dollar is going down, and that's a result of the Federal Reserve System. That's a result of the scam, and you are the victim because that means you're losing your purchasing power.
The permanent government made of both Republicans and Democrats that perpetuates itself with welfare and with warfare. Do they risk their own futures and their livelihoods and their own money to recover any energy? Do they take enormous risks of substantial loss? Do they recover it? Do they refine it? Do they market it? Do they transport it to your neighborhood gas station? Of course they don't. Just how much gas do they put in your tank for $25 billion a year? None. Not a drop. They have destroyed the dollar. They have lied to you about caring for the retirement money that you have sent their way over a lifetime. It's squandered. It's gone. Toast. Vapor. Dust.
But unfortunately, what we're facing is that we have become a nation that has lost confidence. And I think what we're seeing here, occurring here in the last year or so, is our confidence is coming back. Confidence that freedom does work, and that we don't have to depend on the government from cradle to grave. It's obvious the foreign policy is a failure. It's obvious that the Federal Reserve System is a failure. It's obvious that we shouldn't even have the IRS and the tax system.
Young people want something new and to wake up this country so that they don't get stuck with these huge bills and maybe just get the government off their back and out of their hair and out of their wallet. But they need to get a chance to get out of this system and take care of themselves and restore confidence and freedom.
The Constitution gives the Congress the right to coin money. And again, that's coin. That's using a term where metals would be being used.
Your money, the nation's money, is created by private banks. Not the government, not by you. You don't take gold into the mint and say, here's my gold, give me a gold coin. That's how money used to be created.
Half of every transaction is currency. So if someone controls your currency and can manipulate it, there is no free market because they're controlling half of the transaction.
No, you go to the banks or anywhere you want to go and you get paper money that's created by the banks. By the banks, not by the government. It says United States of America on it, but it's not created by America. It's created by the banks, by the cartel.
There are still approximately 3,000 IRS special agents who haven't gotten the message yet. Maybe they never will. No, we're going to show the employees of the IRS and the employees of the federal government at large who's telling the truth and who's not.
It's like going into the casino. You know that when you put that quarter or that dollar into the slot machine, you may win now and then, but a certain percent every time you pull the handle, every time you make an investment or a financial transaction in America today, this giant Federal Reserve casino, they take a little percentage of your money. And the longer you stay in that game, the more they take from you. So that at the end of your productive lifetime, after, say, 40, 50, 60 years of earning your money, they have taken about 98% of it. It went to the federal government and to the banks that are partners in the Federal Reserve System.
We would not have the most deceitful, dishonest, regressive tax, and that's the tax of inflation. And in order to get rid of that, you get rid of the Federal Reserve System.
What? The people must reclaim charge of their own affairs. We must take charge of things like our money.
Because that is where the power is. The power to create money means that you have the political and economic power, and it's secretive, and that eventually will have to end.
It's only because they can make money that they have all this power.
They literally have the money machines.
They have the money machines. They can print it. They can do whatever they want to do.
And we must reclaim our liberty and our peace and our prosperity. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, that means no more foreign wars. That means no more censorship central banks to finance those wars. No more central planners, no more bailouts and billions for the bankers, no more worthless, irredeemable paper money.
Matter of fact, it is going to end because all paper currency self-destruct, and we're in the beginning of the end stages of the destruction of the dollar. So we will have the opportunity. Let us strive for the day that we as individuals who want to use gold and silver won't have our gold and silver coins robbed from us and threatened with prison because we want to follow the Constitution.
How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Ooh.
Under this system that we're striving for, you know what the tax system would be all like. We wouldn't have an income tax at all.
Gold is money. Silver is money. Paper is not. Gold is money. Silver is money. Paper is not. Gold is...
I'm much more optimistic that there's a lot of enthusiasm. I don't think we can head off totally the crisis because there's so much payback that's necessary. We've spent so much that people, individuals or countries that live beyond their means have to live beneath their means for a while. We have to pay the bills. That's what happened in the 1970s to pay for the war in Vietnam and what they called then guns and butter. We're doing the same thing. The big question is, as the economic crisis, builds, the question is whether or not we'll do the right things, allow the payback to occur and get back to work in a year, or whether we go and say, well, we want more government. But the government has nothing. All they do is take away your freedoms. They can't create wealth. They can send dollars, but the more they send, the value goes down on the dollars. So yes, it's a bad choice.
They are like the household staff that is in mutiny. It is your household. It is your country. And it is your staff. They work for you. And they are in a state of mutiny. They are peeping toms, illegally spying on their masters. They are wasting the household wealth. They know no boundaries but run to and fro, alarming the neighbors. The downstairs servants are stealing the silverware. And the upstairs servants won't report it because they share in the plunder. It is time for the people to turn them out, not to replace them with more of the same. Send them all back.
There are a few people here from Canada. There are a few people from around the world. And you want to know why? We see that this Ron Paul revolution is not only a revolution for the United States, we see that it's a revolution for across the entire world. If you look at a graph of personal freedoms over the last 100 years, you see it going down, 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 down. Does anybody want that? If you look at a graph of people's rights being taken away by the government, you look at a graph going up, 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 up. Does anybody want that? Right. And neither does anybody else around the world. So, this is one Canadian standing up, coming down, supporting everybody here. Why? Because we see it's a worldwide issue, and because we want to say, let freedom ring, not only throughout America, but around the world! We want the answers! We want our government to be responsible to the people! We will hold them accountable! Reinvestigate 9/11!
I'm going to take this whole topic and condense it down even further to just 4 words. Abolish the Federal Reserve. That's it.
Follow what your government is doing. There's more to life than shopping. It's not a joke. Your money will be worthless.
Inflation will make your money worthless.
How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Ooh, some say it's just a part of it.
I believe in an American exceptionalism, but it's not because
of our government today. It's not because of our military might, our economy, or any of that bullshit. And it's not even because of the Constitution. And what makes our country exceptional is that in its founding, in the Declaration of Independence, we were given a moment in history where a great number of men and women were compelled to pledge their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors to those utmost of human ideals.
Redemption songs. Redemption songs.
I just wanted to get your take on something that I've always wondered how you felt for a really long time, being an Iraq vet.
Sure.
And that's on the constitutionality of the wars. As far as I understand it, if the Constitution says that you have to declare war to go to war, do you feel that it's a soldier's duty to not go to war and to resist all orders to be sent overseas?
Yes, I do.
So by doing so, you would say that you made a bad choice by going over there, and that
I was
having
suckered.
known what you know now, you might have not done so?
Yes, absolutely. And I would have sought the most proper way through the military chain of command to challenge those orders and ensure that the reason for that was made clear, and to force a military ruling on this, which has not happened yet.
I gotta find.
Any last words?
Have fun.
Any last words?
Question authority. Fight the power.